going to start in 5 minutes, okay? Thank you.
Oh yeah, someone said somebody is here.
And here from the
Today, the questions that matter will be asked and answered. Regulations, risks, resilience, every topic on the table, every voice in the room, from high-rises to homeowners, from board members to lawmakers. This is where challenges meet solutions. So take notes, make connections, and step into leadership with clarity and purpose. The future of our community starts right now.
Yeah, I'm in the wedding. It's not a movie. I'm just here for the elected officials. Yeah, you can sit there. Oh, really?
Good afternoon. Really? Let's do that again. Was there not a bar here? Is there a bar? Good afternoon. Well, welcome to CondoConnect 2025 and welcome to the city of Aventura. Now we can applaud. You know, a few weeks ago, the New Times came out with their best of issue. And we were very surprised that, because we knew nothing about it, but when the issue came out, lo and behold, it said, best city, People's Choice, best city to live in. You know what the answer was? Aventura. We were very, very proud of that. Very proud of that. So, as you know, we are the largest, we're the flagship all-condominium municipality in the state of Florida. We, according to the census, there's 40,000 some odd residents, but we think we're over 50,000 because we're a vertical city. We have also a lot of part-timers and a lot of people that don't really want to be counted. And it's not so easy to count people in 30 stories. So we've got about 40 to 50,000 residents. But also, ladies and gentlemen, we have a little shopping center called the Aventura Mall. How many people have heard of the Aventura Mall? So, also a few weeks ago, another poll came out. This was the USA Today. It was a national poll. What is your favorite mall? This was nationwide. Ladies and gentlemen, America's favorite mall, #1. Aventura Mall. So, here's a little bit of trivia. Outside of Orlando, where all the theme parks are, forget about Orlando for a second. Other than Orlando, the #1 most visited site in the entire state of Florida is the Aventura Mall. 30 million visitors a year coming into Aventura to go to the mall and spend money. So it's a great place to shop and a great place to live, and that's not my opinion, that's fact. New Times and USA Today, they can't be wrong, come on. Anyway, we like to host this event because condominium living is our lifeblood. And the issues are so important right now and so critical. And we're so lucky that we have people who are so dedicated that are willing to come and spend their time. And tonight, this afternoon, we actually want to recognize them. I have a few awards to give out because there are elected officials that really care about condominiums. You may or may not realize that outside of South Florida, There's a big portion of Florida where nobody lives in condominiums and nobody cares about condominiums. So myself and all of my commissioners and our neighboring cities as well, we go to Tallahassee every year during the legislative session, and we try to educate and to get our fair share of tax dollars, to let them know that our issues are different. And they're critical right now, as you know. And so we're going to recognize the people that help us. But first, I just want to recognize some elected officials that are here. And if I don't call your name, it's because my people didn't tell me you were here, but it's not because I don't want you to be recognized. My Vice Mayor, Cindy Orlinsky, is here. Avatar Commissioner Cliff Hain is here. Avatar Commissioner Gustavo Blanchman is here. The Mayor of Sunny House Beach, Larissa Svechin, is here. By the way, we love our neighboring cities. I brag about Aventura because that's my job. We got great neighbors, we love them all. And speaking of which, North Miami Beach, Lynn Sue, Commissioner. My longtime dear friend, Phyllis Smith, Commissioner. My kids are now college graduates, thank God. And since they were toddlers, Phyllis Smith has been telling anyone who will listen, that guy, he's a great dad. That guy's a great dad. Phyllis, you have no idea how much I appreciate that. All those years as my kids grow up, every time you see someone, you say, you know what, he's a great dad. I really appreciate that. The best fun. You had me at best. You had me at best. I'm not gonna mention the others because I'm about to give them awards, but before we do that, I want you to watch a brief video, please. Thank you very much.
Like back in school. Can you laugh?
2025 is our third annual summit, and with that, we're grateful for everyone who has been part of this organization to educate, to empower, and to connect condominium communities. This year, we want to take a moment to recognize the leaders who have truly stepped up. They're always busy, yet they're available. They listen, they help, but above everything, they care about their constituents. It is with great honor that I present to you, on behalf of the City of Excellence, the City of Aventura, the Commission, and Mayor Howard Weinberg, and on behalf of CondoConnect, the awards for 2025, the Condominium Champion Award, the Condominium Transparency Award, and the Condominium Justice Award. One more time, thank you for everything you do, for your commitment to the transparency and well-being of our condominium communities. May God bless you.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we have a county mayor. Where are you, Daniela? We have a county mayor, ladies and gentlemen, Daniela. Let me tell you something. She knows what I'm going to say. She hates when I say this, but I say it every time. You cannot ask her if this is true or not. Aventura, there's 34 municipalities. She is the mayor of 34 municipalities. We are Aventura. We are first in the alphabet, ladies and gentlemen. Do not ask her this. And first in her heart. She knows it. She's smiling. She rolls her eyes. She hates me. She loves me. So we have a Condominium Transparency Award. We have two winners, two award recipients. Mayor Daniela Levine Cava and our County Commissioner, Mickey Steinberg, Miami-Dade County Commissioner, right here. In appreciation of your steadfast leadership, integrity, and dedication to promoting transparency, accountability, and trust within our condominium communities, on behalf of the City of Aventura and CondoConnect, we honor your tireless advocacy and service. If you could both just come up here, I want to hand these to you. You're also more than welcome to say a few words if you want.
Thank you so much. I just wanted to give you a quick update on the condo assessment loan program. Since its launch, Miami-Dade County's condo special assessment program has committed over $39 million to fund more than 1,400 loans county-wide. Per the latest quarterly report, the county closed on $6.3 million loans to assist over 200 condo owners just between January and March of 2025. Over half those loans, about 53%, totaling about 3.3 from this last quarter, supported 120 families in my district, District 4, with critical condo repairs. And I'm happy to report, I'm not sure if the mayor knows this, Mayor Weinberg that is, that a majority of those applications were in Aventura. So, you know, that's a great job for everybody actually filling out their applications and turning it in, but due to the high demand, the Department of the Housing, Community and Development has paused the program temporarily and will reopen in early 2026 to allow staff to process outstanding applications and develop a streamlined digital application portal for faster reviews. So it's going to be repackaged and put back out there, so stay tuned. If you have any further questions on this program, you can always reach out to our office at district4@miamidade.gov. Our door is always open to you. And remember, these are not general fund dollars, these are surtax dollars that we've used. So thank you so much again for this honor.
Well, thank you so much, Commissioner Steinberg, for being a leader here, not just in the northeast of Miami-Dade, but countywide, and to Mayor Weinberg, who lured us up here. And I will say this, Mayor, definitely A is first in my heart. There are 34 cities, and I do love them equally, but I am very, very proud to receive this honor on your behalf. So I do want to say just a few words as well. I'm so happy Commissioner Steinberg told you more about the Special Assessment Loan Fund, which is really a great solution that we came up with after so many are having a hard time putting aside the funds necessary for those necessary life safety concerns. I want you to know that we have doubled the amount of money in my administration to build housing that people can afford. So that has made a difference, and the price of rental is stabilizing in our county. And of course, after the mind-boggling, incredibly upsetting and world-changing collapse of the Champlain Tower South, we have done even more to protect everybody and their homes and their lives and their equity. And I want to acknowledge two senators who were very, very instrumental in the follow-up. And I know that Senator Pizzo is here today. I believe Senator Bradley is here as well. And they took the lead together to make sure that state law would actually adopt a lot of the laws that we had right here in South Florida, as well as to add some additional matters. And in addition to the dollars that we've provided, the protections that we provided long before that terrible collapse, we also created through Commissioner Rene Garcia, a community associations registry. So all condominium associations have to register and to disclose things that were difficult to obtain, that weren't transparent before, to help our owners, our purchasers, to be able to follow through. And we've also created an advocacy position in our county government to advocate for the needs of condominium owners. So we're all about it, keeping everybody safe, providing necessary resources to keep people in their homes, and continuing advocacy for our community. And I'm so proud to be here at this forum. I think I've been here since the beginning, and it has grown and grown and grown. So obviously, you people are in the right place at the right time. Thank you so much again, and congratulations.
Thank you, Mayor and Commissioner Steinberg. I want you to know how lucky you are to have Senator Pizzo and Senator Bradley here, two tireless advocates in Tallahassee for condominium unit owners, and they literally travel around the state, and they know everything. And just brilliant, brilliant people and tireless, as I said, advocates. So my job is done. Soon we're going to start the first panel. I just want you to watch a sponsor recognition short video, because without the sponsors, this doesn't happen. I think the premier sponsor, presenting sponsor is Castle Management, but all the sponsors deserve recognition. So I'm done, although I'll hang around for a nice dinner. The food's not bad here. Thank you very much, and enjoy and learn a lot. Thank you.
I'm the president of Ocean's Edge Condominium. The partnership with Castle Group has been wonderful. It really is very simple, peace of mind. It begins with the support we have in the back office, the regional director, but more importantly, our current property manager, who is always with a sharp pencil for us to yield the best possible financial results. That royal service, that was one of the critical edges for Castle, was how they greet people, the eye contact, they're respectful. It's just that it factor. Relationships matter, and the relationship we have between the ownership, the board, and the management company is wonderful. One of the things when we onboarded with Castle, they wanted to learn about our culture, what we were looking for. So it wasn't like we had to adapt Castle. Castle tweaked their system to adapt to us.
Hi, folks. Good evening. There was an awkward pause and silence right there for a moment because I requested that we skip some of the stuff that Daniela, let's give a round of applause, puts this together, does an amazing job. But you want less elected official political crap, and you want to get right to the meat of the issue, right? So we're skipping some stuff so we give you more time. To start off, that QR code you can use with your phone right now. We have Senator Bradley here and a panel of experts that are going to be coming up. I'm going to ask them to come take the stage, and then we'll do introductions as you take your seats. Try to maximize time. Mr. Gill, I think, is here from the SAO. That QR code, you can submit questions that you might have. Obviously, we have a new bill this year that passed, that was signed into law. Our commitment, Senator Bradley and I especially, our commitment is every one of those questions will get answered. Probably not tonight, right? Based on time, but just submit whatever questions you have about any section of the statute or law or the situation that you're in, and we'll be happy to answer those, okay? I want to jump right to it. My name's Jason. I represent 20 cities in the Florida Senate, from Aventura and Sunny Isles, all the way up to the Palm Beach County line with Deerfield Beach. I'm a former homicide prosecutor, so I didn't flinch when that happened. Just have it. But let's go ahead and welcome our panel. We have microphones. Are they hot? Are they live? Are we good? Let's start on the left. Mr. Moore, who are you?
Thank you, Senator. Travis Moore. I'm a lobbyist that represents a lot of community association interests, such as Community Associations Institute, and I'm happy to be here on this panel. Worked on the legislation the last couple of years. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Misha Mladenovic. Obviously short Misha. I'm the president and founder of M2E Consulting Engineers. We're a full-service engineering company serving the needs of the condominium community for the last 20 years.
Good evening, Roberto Blanche, shareholder at the law firm of Siegfried Rivera. We represent community associations throughout the Southeast Florida region, and I'm also a board member of the local Southeast Florida chapter of Community Associations Institute.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Anthony Gill. I'm the chief of the Economic Crimes Unit at the State Attorney's Office. What that means is everything from condo HOA fraud to insurance fraud. So I'm here and I've been working on a number of the large cases that our office is prosecuting, along with one of our other prosecutors who's here today, Elvia Medina Marcus.
Where's Elvia?
Hey, Jason.
Hey, Elvia, get up
Here she
here.
is.
Get up here.
We are both working on some of the largest cases, including the Hammocks and Turnberry on the Green.
Good evening. I'm Senator Jennifer Bradley. I represent District 6 in North Florida, a largely rural district between Tallahassee and Jacksonville, but for the last 4 years, I've spent a lot of time and effort to try to make sure that the state's condominium crisis following Surfside, that the state could do better. We could do better for the citizens. I've had an incredible partner in Senator Pizzo for the last 4 years, working closely. We have been, this is not our first CondoConnect and nor our first town hall and visit to South Florida for me. And it's great to be with you tonight and talk about the bill this year, which I think really makes a big difference for people in this next step of condo reform.
Good evening, I'm Rebecca Prieto. I'm the Senior Vice President, Team Leader for Florida for Popular Association Banking. We are the leaders and we customize the loans according to association's needs for the past 40 years. We're working through the programs to have a special programs for the funding of reserves. And again, we are a full service bank, ready to help you and work with the communities. Thank you very much for having me.
Good evening, everyone. As was mentioned, Elvia Medina Marquez with the State Attorney's Office, and I have the pleasure of being a direct contact when calls come in on HOA or condo concerns. Our office investigates these. We work with local law enforcement, and I also have the pleasure of having tried cases with Senator Pizzo here when he was a homicide prosecutor, as he mentioned.
Did we win our trials?
We did.
We won our trials, okay, all right. So I'm gonna go back to Elvia real quick and to Mr. Gill. Here has been the problem forever that I've heard even before we got in elected office. DDPR used to say, that sounds criminal, you should go to the state attorney's office. The state attorney's office like, that's more of a civil matter, you should go back. And you get thrown back and forth, and there'd be no resolution. Senator Bradley, I'm going to ask you to give a high-level sort of overview of the bill that passed this year, the 4th iteration of the bill. But now, at long last, you and I are like in joint text messages with the Secretary of DDPR all the time, almost every day. Give the audience and our constituents here a general sense of where we are now, that something has to fall in one of the baskets.
The takeaway, so there's been 4 bills. The first bill was 4D. Then the second bill provided a lot of details and fleshed out what was a quick bill in that special session. The third bill was all good management, good governance, and it addressed what Senator Pizzo talked about with regard to criminal penalties. We identified criminal penalties for fraud, voting fraud, all of those issues. So now we have folks like our state attorneys up here who can step in and address the criminal activity. This year, what was the pressing issue was the financial reality that these regulations, that these safety measures were placing on condo owners in Florida. The takeaway from the bill this year is, without backtracking 1 inch on safety, we extended the milestone deadline to the end of 25. And we also said that for those associations who have completed their milestones, so we know the building is inspected, we know what the required repairs are. For those associations who are completing those repairs, you do not need to begin, you can pause your reserves. And in 2 years, get a SERS and then start reserving. Because at that point, when you go back and do your SERS in 2 years, they're actually basing that on a repaired building. It is a better groundwork and a more accurate reflection of what needs to be reserved because the building has been repaired. Those milestone repairs have been completed. And that avoids associations really having a two-pronged pressure where they're trying to pay for the milestone repairs and reserve at the same time. And that financial reality was unnecessary because I don't think it really advanced safety, because the milestone inspection is the heart of the safety component of this bill, and that's unchanged.
Senator Bradley, one thing we hear every day, I know Joanne does and Kayla does in our office, are about elections and voting at condos as well. They're like, listen, we're tired of this, the box gets hidden in this office, it's only in this room, we can't get to it, we don't see it, it's not secure, we think things are going on. And what did you do in the bill this year as it relates to voting?
With regard to voting this year, and it was a big access issue, is we have a requirement now, not a requirement, but an express authority to have electronic voting. That provides a great opportunity for owners who are out of town, who who's mailed. There's a lot of gamesmanship on when ballots get mailed, when do they get back, if they're international. Now e-voting, if 25% of the members petition their board, then they have to have a binding referendum on that within 21 days. I think they have to have it scheduled.
What about anything as it relates to video meetings?
Yeah, so starting in COVID, a lot of meetings went to video. There was a lot of Zoom, and then we kind of came out of COVID, and associations and other groups were continuing to do that, but there really was a question of, is there really authority in the law under the condo rules to be able to continue doing that? Is it a valid meeting? What is the quorum? How do you keep the meeting records? And so in this bill, we said, look, you can do the video conferencing, you can have that video meeting, but we laid out some specifics. And if there is such a meeting, it has to be reported, it has to be included in the official records. If for an annual meeting, for your big annual meeting, a quorum has to be physically present of the board. But really, we just fleshed that out, and I think that gives all owners and other members the ability to engage and have a link in the notice to the meeting that, hey, this is going to be video conference, and you're going to have the ability to ask a question. And I think that's a good access issue.
Misha, let me jump to you. You've seen a couple of these bills as we've worked on them, and a lot of the input comes from these. Today actually is, how many of you have been to Jacksonville more than 5 times in your life? Okay. How many of you have been to Jacksonville more than 10 times in your life? How many have been there more than 20 times in your life? Very few. Today is Senator Bradley's 30th meeting in Miami-Dade or Broward County on behalf of condo constituents. Please thank her. She's from Clay County, Florida, where there are no condos, and does this really because it was the right thing to do, and she's so gracious and so competent to do it. Misha, what have you seen outside of some gross misinterpretation of some pretty simple words in statute, but from a work basis, professionally, what have you seen over the past couple of years? Where are we now? What needs to be fixed? Where are we going?
Thank you, Senator. What we saw initially, and unfortunately we still see, is that there is essentially a feeling that this bill will go away, that it will be diluted. And no need to be very humble, I cite you every time that they say that. And the fact that you're not ready to lose some more constituents because somebody wants to save money. There is mechanisms that a lot of condominiums are not aware of that allow them to stage the repairs that need to do, because we go into a room and they say, we need to repair this and we don't have the money, what do we do? And the challenge on our behalf as an engineer is to make them understand that as long as the building is safe to be occupied according to an engineering opinion, they can continue to occupy it. We will phase these repairs in little bites that will be easy to eat, one at a time, over time.
Just real quick, the first thing you do, you may perform as a milestone inspection, right?
Correct.
And the milestone inspection is going to tell everybody what?
The milestone inspection is to tell you one of the two things. It is okay the way it is not okay, and what is not okay. It is okay, have a nice day, signed, sealed, sent to the authority having jurisdiction.
Beyond, next, after a milestone inspection, we're talking about a physical plant structure, a building, especially in South Florida, a living, breathing kind of situation that's going to suffer deterioration and age. After milestone inspection, what is the other thing that you and other firms perform?
We perform also SIRS, which is the structural integrity reserve stuff.
So even if the milestone inspection is great, everything's fine, you're still going to have to do a SIRS, right?
Absolutely.
I have my annual physical on Friday afternoon with Dr. Roskin in North Miami Beach, and she's going to say, this is where you are, or this is what you need to do, right?
Correct, over time.
Over time, great. So what challenges are you seeing, because it ties to what Senator Bradley and I have seen? We'll go to a building that has 5 towers of 5 separate associations locally, and they have a SIRS study, and all the residents are talking about how it's 30% less across the street with some other engineering firm that said that it should cost less. So what do you say?
Well, if you recall our first panel, the problem was that suddenly some engineers unretire themselves in order to tell you for $5,000 that your building is fine. Then we get a call a year later because something happened and they go, but we got a clean bill of health. And it is upon the engineers and their professionalism to actually render an opinion that is fair, and you could have buildings that are next to each other based on their exposure who have different type of damage based on where they are situated. That's what we see.
Ms. Prieto, let me go to you. Banks now, as it relates to lending, extending credit, doing any of these facilities that we're trying to do you request the milestone inspection and the SIRS when you're considering lending to the building for these projects, and what's that process like?
Yes, we do. When they come and ask for a loan, the first thing we like to know is, do you have a SIRS available? We'll go ahead and review it with the board, and we look at the 5-year projects that will be due, and then we'll look at 10 years, and based on that, we'll go ahead and structure the line of credit to convert to a term loan.
And let me stay with you for a second. I have 2 quick questions. What did you guys do 10 years ago, before Senator Bradley came up with the idea for a structural integrity reserve study or milestone inspection? What did you look at? Did you guys send out inspectors yourself? Did you have a consulting engineer that you would send out to do an examination? Would you base the schedule on?
We looked at the project budget. We looked if there was an engineer report and what the engineer suggested needed to be done. The research study, some of the buildings had it, but because most of them waived, there was no research study available.
And you heard Mayor Cava was up here saying the same thing. Senator Bradley and I didn't reinvent the wheel. I mean, there's always been a recertification program here in Miami-Dade County and Broward County, and it's sort of modeled and emulated off of that. So you would take a look at that, but now it should be a little bit more uniform as to a building. If a building doesn't have a milestone inspection or a SIRS, something smells wrong, right? And it's not.
We need that. We need that. Our credit officer can provide, especially the amount of the loans that are being requested. We need to see the SIRS report.
Okay. Nisha, let me go back to you real quick. Are banks and institutions reaching out to you to verify or to have you take a look at somebody else's work that may have performed the studies for these buildings?
No, they do not.
Okay. And then, do you have third parties that you're reaching out to take a look at what's been promulgated by an engineer just because it has a stamp on it?
No, we go based on the SIRS report that is done by a professional, and the board has the responsibility to provide us, professional SIRS report.
Okay. All right, let's go to Siegfried Rivera. What are the challenges and problems that we've created in Tallahassee for you guys down here?
Well, I mean, first and foremost, I'd like to recognize the efforts of our legislators in putting these issues on the forefront, bringing them to the table. They're represented to be problems. There are issues, there are hammocks and there are turnberries, but within this room, we probably have a few hundred condominium owners or board members. And in my practice, having done this for 25 years, what happens at the hammocks and at Turnberry are very, very rare exceptions. Our experience representing hundreds of associations is not the theft, is not the fraud, is not the incompetence, is not the lack of transparency, but quite the opposite. You've got board members that are volunteer board members doing the best they can to assist their associations thrive and flourish. I think that because of the loud squeaky wheel, the knee-jerk reaction is to provide some type of relief, but it's not surprising that we constantly have what are informally referred to as glitch bills every legislative session. And I don't know exactly whether it's due to last-minute provisions that are made in order to get something adopted.
It's mostly lobbyists from stakeholder organizations.
No, he's chomping at the bit, but
no one knows me to be shy. I'm going to be honest with you.
I think that there is this perception that condo board members are bad, that condo managers are bad, and as a society we need to change that narrative and recognize that there are some areas in which we need to improve, but the reality is we're creating more problems in the practice and in the day-to-day operation of community associations and condos than really needs to be created in order to address the issues. You know, there are some bad players,
so let me ask
and
you,
the bad players,
right,
I believe from a constitutional perspective, the legislature is biting off more than they can chew in a lot of these legislations. These are vested contractual rights.
We do that a lot.
That exist with homeowners that have purchased into deed-restricted communities and condo owners that have purchased.
We agree with you. We agree with you, but sometimes the reality and common sense is not that common in Tallahassee. That's why I asked. So these glitch bills that have come, let me ask you, Travis, I'll go to you. And the reason why you're here and you've been at a number of these is because you're characterized as a lobbyist, but you are literally the one that's going office to office between the House and the Senate, all the committees to explain things, to mediate, to do. You're the United Nations with your book bag. But here's my question: is it not special interests, lobbyists for special interests, for whether it's the legal profession, accounting profession, management profession, that like things kind of the way they were, and Senator Bradley and I come along like a Girl Scout or Boy Scout and start making requirements, and that's kind of inconvenient for some of these professions, wasn't it?
Agreed. Unfortunately, before a tragedy that occurred, there were very few legislators, you being one of them, that we could even find to talk about condo issues, that were even willing to kind of take those issues on. Now, we all of a sudden, now that there's this focus on it, so before, absolutely, there was, it was kind of piecemeal, kind of put together. The developers would want something, the realtors would want something, and I'm not even saying bad things, but things that would just, it would kind of cobble together, and there wasn't the comprehensive approach that I think now is being taken on things, certainly like funding. One of the things that I would mention is, two things real quick. Because of the issues that happened here that were mentioned directly in this community, led to the changes that then came forward in this bill regarding community association managers and community association management firms and how they're regulated. And all of those issues came because people were literally getting perped walked out of buildings from blocks from here. The other thing is condos are very unique as it relates to other buildings. This building, high-rise building, it's managed or run, owned by one single ownership entity, the Hilton. An apartment complex, it's one particular ownership. Condo, unfortunately, like Champlain Towers East, you had 136 owners that had a say in how that building was going to be maintained, unlike a building like this, and so they would inevitably, many condos would just continue to waive those reserves. There was no requirement to have a reserve study, something that existed, you should do it, but now you do.
How many of you live or associate with condos less than 150 units? Okay. Does anybody want to take a guess who win a prize if one of the things that are changing this year with this bill that's coming up that you have to do that you didn't have to do before? Huh?
Internet access for all residents and owners.
Okay, you actually have to put your records up that you didn't have to do before. 25 or more units, you want to talk about that?
You had attempted for many years to try to get it at 25, which is where we ended up here. Again, not a lot of interest, kind of fell on deaf ears, except whatever the reason was. And then, unfortunately, we had a tragedy that happened in a building with 136 units, because they had set it at 150. Unfortunately, again, nobody wants to say I told you so, but it became this, that should be lowered. And so now, starting January 1, it'll be 25 units.
Let me go back, Mr. Gill. You mentioned a couple. Can I call you Anthony?
It always calls.
Can I call you Tone? Can I call you
Tone
T?
works as well.
Can I call you T? What are you seeing? What are you able to do, LV? What are you guys able to do that you weren't? I knew you were frustrated a few years ago because you're like, there's a limit to what we can do. What are you able to do now that you weren't able to do a few years ago?
So it's funny you ask that because what I wanted to do was paint the picture. So let's go from hammocks to Turnberry to now, right? And if you look back at the state of where our laws were in Tallahassee, and by the way, I'll pause here because I'd like to thank Senator Bradley. I'd like to thank Senator Pizzo because you know, them along with our other partners in Tallahassee have made a lot of legislative changes happen. So is anyone, I'm sure folks in here have heard about the Hammocks community. If you haven't, the quick and dirty here is that the Hammocks community was subject of one of the largest HOA frauds in the country, by far. And a lot of that dealt with self-dealing, and a lot of that dealt with the lack of regulation. One of the egregious, I guess, things that they did was they stored their records literally on the 49th mile away from the association. So you start there. You also realize that the state of the law, when that crime was going on, meant that the board president could literally give a contract to her cousin with no vote by the board. Now, I think that leads us directly then to Turnberry and then to the state of the law now, where you have a legislative change that was enacted, enacted at this, by, with your help, obviously, that now prohibits self-dealing to family members. And I'll let Elvia pick it up here because that's really helping her in her current investigation.
And I'll say the changes in the law, not only are they helping catch individuals who are bad actors, but they're also helping recognize when that's not what's happening, and that there are great board members and great community managers doing good work to do this. The internet requirement of 25 and below, a lot of times it's questions and lack of transparency that once that's not a problem, everyone can see where money is going, what's going on. Half of the suspicions go away. So even though it seems like a difficult thing to do on the front end to have, so many more requirements in terms of these electronic records, on the other hand, it's also clarifying to people who may have lots of questions or not know exactly what's happening, that they can have the power to go themselves and look at these answers and see where the money is being spent. In terms of the other changes that have been very big in our investigation since the changes in the law, both this past year and the one before, because now a little time has passed, the clarity in not allowing kickbacks. This was a very vague area of the law, believe it or not, and what was allowed and what wasn't allowed. And it was a big frustration because obviously individuals who are doing this, great service to their fellow owners, are doing this because they have an interest in making sure the community is doing well, but they're not to be profiting, and same for the property managers, except for, the fees that they're charging. And that was something that we had a lot of trouble prosecuting, and now the law is clear as day as to what's allowed and not. Last topic I will mention is, and this is something that Senator Pizzo mentioned a little bit, was the issues with DBPR, what's criminal, what's not, and the ping pong game that was occurring between these baskets. Well, what this legislation has done is made both baskets more robust, making sure nothing falls through the cracks. Because now there are areas where the DBPR looks into, but there's also, in certain circumstances, the most egregious, now there's criminal penalties in certain voter.
So somebody got arrested in Aventura, right?
Yes.
Who got arrested?
You're saying?
A person got arrested, a property manager got arrested in Aventura.
Yes.
A board member, right? Okay. Did they have access to money or to another building or to another association? Are you seeing those situations? Here's what I'm asking, whether we're trying to close loopholes. If there's wrongdoing or criminal activity found in a property manager, board member, whatever, they may have access or management access or the checkbook access, whatever, at another property, you guys aren't automatically going ahead and revoking or suspending their license or their ability to access at another building or jurisdiction, are you?
We don't even have the power to do that.
We're not, but then the DBPR now, with the new legislation, once an arrest is made and information is filed, they automatically can revoke those licenses so that those individuals...
Was that the case before? No.
No, and now that safety precaution is making sure that this, whatever bad practice was happening, is not going to occur anywhere else, even if there's not proof in that application.
And once it's revoked, they cannot manage again, essentially, or own a management firm or any of that for up to 10 years.
Correct, and that has strengthened even more this year with that provision of the 10 years to make sure that doesn't happen again and that these individuals are not able to do that.
Question number... Yes.
Sorry, I mean, just,
Go ahead.
Yeah, we'll get there. Think of the number of issues that we have addressed already in 30 minutes on the stage, from e-voting, conflicts of interest, criminal penalties, reserve studies, reserves, physical inspections. These issues are the result of the fact that the condo statutes have not been updated and modernized in decades. These issues are not new issues. These are issues that have been pushed under the rug, not really cared about, not really put in the sunshine. And so have there been 4 bills in the last 4 years to address this? Yes, there have been. Will we have another one? Yes. Will it be a glitch bill? Well, I don't know. I mean, when you're addressing the number of issues, we've had grand jury reports, we've had House Select Committee reports. And we did not reinvent the wheel when we did these, when we took the core principles of a recertification and the requirement to reserve. The state law has always required you to reserve. We also allowed by law for that to be waived over and over and over again. So is it in reaction to Surfside? Absolutely. I mean, that tragedy is not going to go unremedied and unaddressed. But Surfside just tragically revealed all of the issues in condo law. So I mean, people refer to it as a glitch bill. We have conflict. This bill that we did this year covers conflicts of interest for our managers who our boards are voting on contracts that the management company owns the vendor. They have a financial stake, and so I said the board should know. Right? Should the board know that they're voting on a contract that the management company, for a company that the management company owns? Yes, they should. You would be surprised the pushback that comes from that. And making sure that when an engineer or an architect does a milestone or a SERS, that they disclose to the board whether they intend to bid on that work. I mean, we don't want incentives built into the program where somebody finds a bunch of issues in a milestone or inflates the SERS and has projects laid out that will end up being in their financial interest. And big change and really pushing for these issues creates a lot of resistance. Sometimes there's only so many things you can get into one bill, and I think we started with milestone and reserves. But these are issues that have existed for decades. And so will there be another bill? Yes, next year, maybe. But we've done a lot in 4 years in addressing transparency, accountability, fraud, corruption, and safety.
First question that came in, how is the state involving banks to help with SERS funding options? So what opportunities have we now created? And we sort of addressed this, I don't know when that question was submitted, but we addressed it by basically the fact that now we're giving you some uniformity, some sort of market standard as to what you're looking for when you're going in to do that. But we did also, and we have a lot of discussion to have about it, but we also introduced the ability to have credit lines available for associations as well. But do you want to speak to that?
And I want to say that we've always had the lines of credits available to convert to term loans for over 35 years. I've been with the bank for 25 years. I was a senior lender, and I know many of you here. I've done many of these lines. Now we're doing it a little different. Now we have the SERS report, and I love it because before, boards sometimes would choose what projects to do and which projects not to do, or to delay the projects. That doesn't exist anymore.
Do you have, and I want to follow up on this,
can I comment on this for a second?
Roberto, this is how this is going to work, okay? This is how this is going to work. We're going to ask questions, and then we're going to be respectful of each other and go back and forth, okay? Sir, you can take a walk if you want. These are our constituents, and these are their condo issues. Sir, I'm gonna ask you honestly. How many of you have big fat checks that you have to write out for special assessments pending right now? You do, right? Okay, keep your hands up. How many of you have things that were listed and itemized on things you're getting assessed for that have nothing to do with the structural integrity of the building? Is that a big issue for you guys? Yes. It was a big issue for Senator Bradley and I too when we saw $30 million assessments and things like pool furniture were on there, right? Yep. So, Rebecca, let me ask you this question. Can you continue to work with us? We might call it a glitch bill later on. But do you have certain codes like insurance companies do and contractors do, and I know Misha does, as to where a particular item would fall under to justify something you're going to lend to? And what I mean by that is one of the buildings in our district had a $30 million pending assessment from 1,249 condo owners, and there's a $200,000 line item for pool furniture. Is that something that you would sort of X out and say, we're not lending for that item?
No, we're going to look at the serves and the non-reserves study. And they're going to request what they need, and we're going to look and make sure that they get it done, and we'll lend them the money for it. But we're not going to say we're not going to lend for this or we're not going to lend for that. Is that what you're asking?
If you identify something that's not a legitimate CSRS item, will you alert them that that's not something we're lending on, or you'll exclude that from them?
No, I'm assuming that the person who did the CSRS report is an expert. We're not experts in preparing reserve studies or CSRS. We're experts in providing findings. So we'll look at the CSRS report and go by that.
And what is the liability for Misha if he provides and puts a stamp on a CSRS study that you then rely and depend on for your lending to that association? What's his liability? Misha?
Today, I wouldn't know because we wouldn't put furniture there.
Yes.
But I imagine that somebody could lodge a complaint because obviously, unless those are very, very sturdy furniture, they would not have any structural contribution.
So, Roberto, go ahead. So the comment I wanted to make is that we recognize that having to fund for a lot of these expenses is putting a strain on condominium associations. Before 913, there are many condominium associations that legally were able to go out to a lender and obtain a line of credit and a loan without a unit owner vote. However, as a result of the changes made to 913, now all associations, irrespective of what their governing documents provide as to a vote of the owners to obtain a line of credit or a loan, need to get a unit owner vote. And so I was under the impression that the effort in the bill was to make it easier for associations to fund these necessary expenses, but it seems that as a result of this legislation, now a lot of these associations that desperately need to finance and obtain the lines of credit or loans to fund these repairs are finding an additional impediment. I don't know if that was intended or unintended.
Senator Bradley, you think that?
It was very much intended. We saw CSRS reports coming out that were millions and millions of dollars. And the owners were told, you have to do this. The state is making you reserve $60 million for, and we would look at these CSRS studies, which is the genesis, obviously, is to make sure that the reserve funds are there for structural issues with the building. And there were so many things listed on that CSRS report. And I had an engineer come to me and tell me that the manager at one association, I told him, just put it all in the report. You don't need to separate it all out. Don't do one is structural and identify what it is, because if we don't put it in now with all the new financial requirements, we will never get this money. And so the answer is yes. In this year's bill, we said the CSRS are going to clearly identify what is a required reserve item and what isn't. And I am not going to tell boards that, or unit owners and residents who live in condominiums, that when they get their CSRS without any input from them, without any ability to challenge the CSRS report, that the board can go out and take a big loan or a line of credit without them playing a role in this process. And that was something that I fought for very hard. We are not getting rid of unit owner votes. Quite intentional.
I think that perhaps the issue with that, because I agree, in the example you've described, there should be a mechanism to prevent that. The problem, however, is that for many of the associations that need to finance these necessary reserves, the choice they have is we either specially assess now to fund these huge, assessments for our building in order to fund the reserves in an adequate number, or we can go out and get a longer term loan so that we lessen the impact. Right now, without the luxury of going out to get a loan or a line of credit that can spread the impact of this assessment over years, many associations are going to be forced to adopt a one-time special assessment, and it's going to be a pretty big pill for a lot of associations to swallow. I don't have a thought.
I would imagine that if the board laid out the situation as you're describing, with full transparency, information, documents, numbers, and everything else to the owners, we're looking for a majority vote for people who live there, who are responsible for the items, to have a say and say, it's in my financial interest for it to be a loan and not a one-time special assessment.
We'll do you one better. You said many, many, many associations. So give Senator Bradley and I by email this week 3 associations that are running into that problem, and we will personally appear at their next meeting if they present what the financial options are to the condo owners. And maybe it lends a bit of credence and credibility to the idea, because let's be honest, a lot of you were former board members and there's new ones, and then this, I don't trust them. Somebody can always get something cheaper, always build it better. We get those every single day, we get it. But if there really is a holdup and we created something that's so onerous and they're not nimble enough and they're not flexible enough to be able to go ahead and be able to make that decision and make that commitment on a longer term basis, which might be fiscally and fiduciarily responsible, we're happy to assist in that situation. I just don't know many associations that don't have in their docs that there's a dollar or percentage limit that cannot be exceeded either by a board without a vote. How many do you have?
Coincidentally, the majority of my clients do not have to get unit owner votes to borrow, and it's been beneficial to most of my clients because it's made the ability to pay for these large capital projects something that wouldn't force somebody on a limited income into foreclosure, perhaps.
So what do I do?
We can continue this.
Yeah, well, but there's a couple of people I think in this audience that are familiar with or live in an association where I have a management company that has a separate LLC that goes and basically acts like a loan broker and gets 1.5 points up to 3 points for finding and securing a loan for the association. How do I govern that without there being absolute transparency and credibility at issue?
To your point, the conflict of interest issues, I think, go a long way to address those types of situations. But my situation is one absent of a conflict of interest, one solely based on the need for owners that are on limited incomes and need to find a way to more easily be able to bear the brunt of a large-scale special assessment. To provide them with the ability to get that loan for their association goes a very long way.
But it's been only in the last 2 months since the governor signed the bill that we actually require the CSRS to clearly lay out what is required, what is a required reserve item, CSRS item for structural issues, and what is not. And the number of CSRS that I saw that included items, so to give that board the unilateral authority without any input from the owners to be able to address issues that were in that CSRS report, was just a non-starter.
Yeah,
we're happy to work offline with you guys.
Senator Bradley gave one example. She's failing to mention, and you guys can see this on a news program that was about 6-7 months ago. We were here for a meeting with 4 or 5 associations, and I said, hey, Senator Bradley, I said, Jen, do you mind if we stop by this one other association that Joanne from my office has been talking to? We walk in the building, a group of owners are there, and an 85, 86-year-old woman walks up to Senator Bradley and she goes, I paid everything off. I go for a couple laps for a swim every day. I can't pay a $105,000 assessment for my unit. We spent an hour with the owners, then the management came in, then all of a sudden board members showed up. It was an impromptu meeting, and I think we shaved $12 million off the special assessment in 45 minutes.
The CSRS, the report that the owners were being asked to pay, was a veritable wish list of improvements and ideas and yoga circles and things that would, and that just...
Literally drapes and lights.
Just unacceptable. Just unacceptable.
Again, in the trenches, and you all are in the trenches. I know you guys do a great job dealing with the constituents, but also as a practitioner, I will tell you, while the example you've given is grotesque and horrible, and really presents a problem, 99%, if not more, of the SIRS that I've seen are good faith, necessary SIRS, and the assessments that the associations are having to fund for these capital expense projects don't include a lot of this fluff. I just think that there's a way to to resolve the problem without, negatively affecting the good players.
That's a fair point. I think that every owner wants the ability to make sure, and just to back up for 1 second so that people understand clearly why we're talking about the lines of credit being able to fund the SIRS. Until the bill this year, when you were required to reserve, all of those reserves had to be in cash. Basically, they had to collect the cash every month or in their monthly assessment. And what the bill this year did was it said, look, association, if you go get a line of credit, and then as a state, we know that that money is available when that structural repair needs to be made, that an outstanding line of credit will satisfy that portion of the reserve requirement. That avoids it needing to be in cash on day one. And so lines of credit, yes, have always been used and will continue to be used. What's different this year is that that line of credit will satisfy the new reserve requirement.
All right, excellent. Senator Bradley also mentioned it's applicable to a number of associations in our district. Once now that you get the milestone inspection, if you go ahead and address a number of things that are effectively brand new and restarting their life cycle, their useful life cycle, that there is a pause on having to go collect reserves immediately, integrity reserves, structural integrity reserve items immediately. We give you a pause and give you a break, on that situation. Let's take one.
With the majority vote of the unit owners.
With the majority vote of the unit owners. Question number 3, board meetings require a physical location for video conferencing, but it does not say that that location needs to be staffed and run the meeting. Does it meet the requirement to merely have a PC or other device in a common area where participants can go to log in to a Zoom call for board meetings? My legislative interpretation, Senator Bradley and Mr. Moore, is from experience, where I've had constituents say, yeah, there's a Zoom meeting, but they block us out and I can't ask questions, and who's had that problem before, right? Yeah. Literally happened when I was physically at, I think it was the Hemispheres. 200 people, I think that it needs to be very specific. Here's number 1. You can record your board meetings. If someone tells you you can't be recording, you can record your board meetings, okay? So what I like to see, and I think it doesn't rise to necessarily criminal, if you guys now run Zoom board meetings, record it if you can't get access and show that you're trying to get access to it, you're not being addressed, or you can't ask your questions. It's very, very important.
They should be on the website.
Should be on the website. Jones?
I also just know that DBPR, and it used to be that we would just bash DBPR because they did nothing, but at least that things have changed a bit because of your focus. They are for the electronic, or the e-voting, and the virtual meetings. They are working on rules to address those kinds of things that aren't specifically laid out in the law. Like, does a computer monitor just suffice in the physical location as being a physical location? So hopefully we'll get some answers there, and if not, you'll be back in January.
But the interpretation is, I can provide e-voting as an option. I don't have to provide an electronic digital device for you to place an e-vote. You have to provide it. So I'm actually going to take the opinion that if you can access it. Roberto, you want to say something?
Yeah, with regard to the virtual meetings, again, the virtual meetings became a thing pandemic times. And since then, they've persisted because it's provided the ability for owners that can't make it to the meeting to at least see what's happening. The flip side to this, if we make the virtual meetings too regulated, my fear is that the flip side might be boards will say, no more virtual meetings, no more Zoom. You want to come and partake in the meetings? Come in person, and you can no longer see it or view it from your home or from your house in North Carolina or Colorado or wherever you're at. And I fear that legislating this too much might have an unintended consequence.
Well, let me ask you about unintended consequences, because this is actually another one of the questions. There are situations where 90 is non-personnel related, but there's one item that's personnel related, so that makes the whole meeting private. No. Because it has one part that's that.
No.
How does your firm deal with those issues?
My interpretation is the only item you can discuss behind closed doors is personnel matters. Everything else needs to be discussed out in the open. And the only other time you can have a closed meeting is with the attorney to discuss attorney-client privilege issues regarding pending or proposed litigation. Very narrow, and any board that tries to have a closed meeting contrary to that is breaking the law.
How many have had that situation where there's closed meetings to your condo association, and because it's some part of it, you seem to you maybe had one or two. Yeah. Next question. How do you treat associations that have the board, but then have an executive board that meets privately on issues?
Open meetings.
Okay. We still have that situation. Anybody have an executive board separate from the regular board that meets privately? That's an issue that we're also going to address. Next question.
Well, that last one was good.
No, it's
that last one on construction defects was good.
Go back.
Can we go back one?
Defects question. Why are there so many properties with construction defects? Sometimes blatantly obvious mistakes that shouldn't be approved by city inspectors in different cities across Miami-Dade.
I think that's a good one for Misha.
It's a good one. Misha, you and I have sat on panels where we said the cocaine cowboy days of Miami, inspectors were taking brown bags of 50 grand, kicking tires, never going to do an inspection, right? Even on the insurance company side. And people looked the other way, and crap was built in a lot of places, and a lot of corners were cut.
I have a question for the audience and yourself. What is the average time that an inspector spends on a site doing inspection? Anybody want to guess?
I'll take a guess. 30 minutes.
How about 7?
7.
Wow.
So, and that's not because he or she wants it, but that's the pace at which they need to conduct them.
But this is why we need to extend the statute of repose rather than shorten it.
And on top of that, not only is there a limited
Roberto, I agree with you, but I think I was one of the very few elected officials in Tallahassee who fought to keep the condo statute of repose longer instead of single-family homes, and got a lot of pushback for it.
So on top of
we
that,
extended that. We made it from in the bill last year, but not for, it doesn't address HOAs and other things, but for condos, at least there's a fighting chance for owners to be able to sue.
The clock starts running on construction defects on condos at turnover. And as a concession with some of our colleagues on behalf of large home builders, the statute of repose is
shrinking.
So they have less liability for a shorter period of time, but we push back. The turnover starts at turnover for condos.
I think also that the fact that, and we know this in construction litigation, the fact that somebody was inspected is absolutely no guarantee that it's actually safe. The only kind of really serious inspection is by the fire department, because ultimately they do the safety checking. But we have in litigation all the time, well, it's not really a defect because you got a permit. Well, yeah, it is still a defect. Therefore, how many? The time that it's take to inspect, the fact that they are overburdened, the fact that some of them are having non-professional conduct like you mentioned it, but also the fact that we live in the single most aggressive environment that you could have. And I always say, you have Everglades in the west, you have ocean on the east, you have underground murky water on the back, and you have hurricanes coming from upstairs. So yeah, it's going to have defects over time.
Okay. Let me take this last. It is the My Safe Florida Home program, not for condo associations anymore. The My Safe Florida Home program, which was funded again this year with $280 million. There was a pilot program for condos that was started last year that went nowhere. Senator Brownlee and I were urging the chief financial officer at the time to go ahead and open the website. It was supposed to be effective July 1st. It didn't go online until the first week in November last year. And they didn't figure out how to go ahead and hand out the $30 million. or what the threshold was. They did not re-up with additional 30 million, but the program is open for condos. I filed an amendment on a bill this year, took the appropriations kind of by surprise, to fund condo pilot program for inspections and repairs to your units, and I asked for $500 million for condo owners to be able to use to finance that. It shocked people, but I said, listen, we've been getting hundreds of millions of dollars for single-family homeowners, for years now. So we'll be back with that, and I would hope for at least $100 or $200 million for that program in the future.
Can we lower the vote requirement?
Oh, we did. So your understanding is it's what?
You're not 100%.
At this session, we changed that. Senator Bradley? So, and to be candid, I'm giving Roberto a hard time because he's a very intelligent guy. He's a little more handsome than I am, so maybe I'm a little angry about that. But here's the thing. Senator Bradley and I, and we discuss this a lot, there's an education component to this that owners need and board members really need. And a lot of the board members that game the system, and since they were pre-existing, they didn't have to go for the education. The new ones coming on board in 90 days. But owners need to get educated too. And God bless Joanne in my office. Where is she? Joanne, right? So she's heard people at the worst time in their lives describing the worst events. Suicides, homicides, break-ins, robberies, home invasions. And she will tell you that it literally pales in comparison to the drama of the stories of condo owners and boards and constituents coming. Not kidding. Not kidding. This is your home. It's emotional. You can't be dispassionate from it. This is where you live. And people are spending and making decisions about your life and your quality of life, and you feel like you have no input, you have no control. But at least I think my constituents, Senator Bradley, you've seen this. None of you have ever said to me, this is ridiculous, I'm not paying for it. All you said was, I'm willing to pay for it. I realize we went 15, 20, 30 years without putting in anything. I just want to see the numbers. I just want to see the numbers. Today, 80% of Joanne's time is still consumed with condo issues. And I'll give you an example. It's not your law firm. A much bigger law firm is over a particular association. They wrote an email about me and said, oh, Senator Pizzo's the one that wants to throw all the board members in jail. He's the architect behind that, was one thing they said. But they went ahead, Joanne, right, and scheduled an open public records examination, and nobody showed up for one of our associates. Nobody showed up. And that happens more than you think. And there's law firms and there are property managers who have not taken us seriously. So you guys, who has kids that know what FAFO means? It's coming. Mr. Gill, how many cases are you actively investigating right now, would you say, as it relates to condos or prosecutions?
I want to say it's about, I want to say it's in the 30s, and Elvia, you can confirm that, right?
30 in terms of, that's probably okay in terms of investigations, but that's pin drop in the number of concerns, questions, where we are looking into something, where we're looking at documents, or someone's calling us with a question that may or may not be criminal, and whether we refer it to DPR or if it's something else. But we get all kinds of questions. But then what we do is after the initial intake, it's whether this goes one step further once we've looked at documents that it's going to, that there is a true suspicion.
So what I'll say, and I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but what I'll say is that we spend hours of person time sifting through a large funnel, because what a condo owner or an HOA member might think is criminal is not actually criminal. But there are resources that we can point them to. So I know that while I say that there are 30-some investigations or inquiries that we're doing right now, it's significantly more, because we get calls every single day, sometimes an hour, don't we?
Any given week, there'll be dozens, between 1 and 2 dozen calls probably.
Our time is up. We have a number of things. It says, how can we trust electronic voting when we can't trust many management companies or board members? There are a few programs that have electronic voting. I have not seen a problem with the ones that we are aware of. That's something they can tell us. How many of you have a question that you think is a criminal question? How many of you, that something's going on, it's criminal in your board? 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's group together, after this on that, and you got Anthony and you got Elvia here as a captive audience. How many of you have an issue with DVPR? Okay, 30 issues with DVPR. Is this something that we can resolve and we can get to? Does everybody know how to get a hold of your legislators? Don't say you don't know how to get a hold of my office. But I'll see you after. Okay. Folks, here's what we really can't legislate. We're not supposed to, because Senator Bradley and I do believe in a free market. Yeah. We've been to a condo building in Aventura, and the SIR study for the exact same building, literally 80 feet away from the other building, is 40% more. So constituents say, why are they paying $2.1 million for the roof and we're paying $2.6 million for the roof? Why is it saying that? And then the wrinkle that's really important, Misha, you're on this panel because you're not one of those firms that do this, but some of those companies are bidding a certain number because they want the work and they'll do a change order later. Follow what I'm saying? Is it criminal? No. Is it unethical? Absolutely. Does it fall in her basket to go prosecute in front of a jury? No. No, it doesn't. So you might call it glitch bills, but there are ways where there are hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars every month being paid in association fees in my district, 20 cities. I have Sunny Isles all the way up the coast. And guess what? If you're off, if you're wrong, if you're overpaying by 1%, 2%, 3%, it's hundreds of millions of dollars a year. And so it may not be criminal, folks. You gotta understand that. Many of you have come to our office and you're showing me something, and they go, yeah, you're overpaying for that. That's screwy. That's crazy that you paid that, or they're doing this or doing that. But is it criminal? No. Okay. We're gonna ask Travis. You're gonna close us out. We have all the questions. We're gonna get to next guy.
And I'm all for business opportunities that are being created. But before it was a requirement, just human nature to have reserve studies. There were about 6 companies that did reserve studies in Florida, and they're a good financial tool. After the law, then there was like 60-some that all of a sudden started doing them. So one of the things that I think was very necessary that was in the bill was directing DVPR to come up with a uniform form and method, because you've got different, and in fact, we were at a town hall over in Stewart somewhere, and they were looking at a bill that was like 2 years old. Their reserve study company was saying, well, you got to do it this way.
$3,600 a month in reserves alone for 800 square foot units.
Yeah. Right. So, but the DVPR is working now to also come up with a uniform form and method of this is how this will, so that there's some consistency.
Okay, excellent. Please reach out to us. Please, we are accessible. We'll get back to you. Again, I want to thank Daniela for putting this together. We'll do a picture. Those that have questions about criminal stuff, we'll talk to you, for a second for a question. And then, again, reach out. Thank you to Travis, to Misha, to Roberto, to T, to Senator Bradley, to Rebecca, and to Elvia. Thank you guys so much.
Think about stopping the water. Once that's stopped, if you go back and look at the engineering information from the NIST group that did the evaluation of the condo, yes, it was a structural failure, but what caused that structural failure? Copious amounts of water that came in, oh yeah, by the pool deck. But you know what else? Windows, folks, wall systems. You can't just put lipstick on a pig and hope it doesn't leak on you. You can't do that. And that's one of the things that my company is doing as far as an advocacy and prioritizing what needs to be looked at. The structure is going to be evaluated by the forensic guys, but you gotta stop the water. If you don't do that, you've got problems.
Hey Jake, got a question for you. Can you explain what payment and performance bonds are as it relates to these types of projects and why they may be recommended?
Every manager and board's favorite topic when contract negotiations start. So the purpose of a payment bond is to protect your property from liens from your general contractors, subcontractors, or suppliers. It doesn't prevent liens altogether, but if you have a large project and your general contractor is hiring someone to do the waterproofing, someone to do the painting, to supply the sliding glass doors, whatever it might be, you do not have a contract, typically, the board, with those subcontractors. So you can't really do much to force the general contractor to pay the people they're hiring, right? One way to prevent them from recording valid liens against your property in that situation is to have a payment bond. In that case, if they have a claim, if you paid the GC and they failed to pay their subcontractor, the subcontractor will have to look to the bond to recover. A performance bond, on the other hand, is slightly different. I think bonds are often described kind of like insurance policies. It's not exactly what it is, but what a performance bond does is it provides a guarantee that if your contractor goes under, if they have demonstrated they're utterly incapable of doing the work correctly, you can submit a performance bond claim after following certain steps under the bond, and that, I guess the provider of the bond, who's called the surety, becomes obligated to complete the construction contract. So what that means is, as the board association owner, to get the job done, all you have to do, if done correctly, is to pay the balance of your contract. Rather than, I think Senator Pizzo talked about this, getting hit with some giant change order that another contractor might have to give you to complete your job. Right? If someone goes under in the middle of a project, you do not want to be rebidding, doing a new contract, because that new contractor is going to charge you for mobilization, their own general commissions, their own insurance. The performance bond is a way to lock you in to what you already agreed to pay the original contract.
Thank you, Jake. Jason, what credentials are required to conduct a Sears nowadays, besides just the licenses and certifications? What do you got to be?
Yep, so the first thing is that, the paper part, what you need to have on license. So you need to be either a licensed Florida architect, engineer, or a reserve specialist, which is a CAI designation, or a PRA, which is a professional reserve analyst, and that's a designation that comes from a corporation called APRA, Association of Professional Reserve Analysts. So one of those four have to be involved in the project to do a service. Now, beyond that, I'm a big proponent of the paper on the wall and the plaque behind you. It doesn't mean much if you don't have experience, right? And I think everyone here would agree with me on that. You need to have experience doing the type of reserve study or the type of SIRS that you're doing. Pretty basic idea there, but you'd be surprised. Maybe not. If you are a pro at HOA reserve studies, or they don't need SIRS, so HOA reserve studies, and you have one of these designations that I just mentioned, one of those four, but then you get an RFP for a 40-story high-rise on Brickell, and you take that. Well, when have you done, you might have done 1,000 reserve studies for homeowners associations or townhomes, let's say, but when have you done a high-rise, okay? And how many of them have you done, if any? That's what really matters, because when you're doing SIRS, there's a science and an art to it, such that there's the RS means, there's things you can look up, the Googling, and whatever you want to do, whatever database you're using, But if you don't have experience and you know that this roof is an $8,000 per square roof, and that roof over here on the other side of Florida is more like a $1,500 to $2,000 per square roof. If you just don't know that gut check reaction, there's probably going to be some discrepancies in that.
So there's more to just licenses and certifications. You gotta have the experience. I think it was alluded to earlier. We only had a few people doing reserve studies, and now we have a whole bunch of people doing it. So, Jake, in your experience, what common contract issues lead to litigation? I know there's a bunch, but what's the top three?
Well, I can give a 4-hour seminar on this easily. I would say the number one thing we see is a contractor thinks they're owed a payment and the board disagrees, right? It's usually that simple. And I think what often guides that is the language of the contract and is everyone following it, right? Hopefully, if you're negotiating a contract for a large project, you're giving it to your competent construction legal counsel, of course. But a typical construction contract is going to have certain things a contractor has to do to get paid, right? They need to have the work approved by your engineer or your owner's rep or your inspector. They need to provide lien releases from subcontractors. Before a final payment is issued, you have to get the permits closed. Things that make sense during the course of the project. Why would I, as the owner, pay you if you haven't done this yet? What I very often see is a lot of boards, property managers at times, tend to not follow the requirement of those contracts so closely, right? They might let it slide. They might, or an owner's rep or an engineer, someone might sign a pay application before all those steps are done. And even if the contractor might not be technically entitled to payment at that time, they're going to point to the board and say, wait a second, you didn't require me to do this the last time you paid me, right? So it creates this dynamic where the owner might be right under the contract, but no one really bothered to enforce it during the course of the project. I see that all the time. And a good way to address that, I think, is for managers and boards to have a general understanding of what's required for payment. But this goes back to the owner's representative discussion that Paul brought up earlier. If you have a good owner's representative or a good design professional with construction administration duties, they know what to look for, right? They should know what to check for before they approve a payment. And there's a whole host of things that can happen during a project in the event of a dispute. Some contracts have dispute resolution procedures where the engineer of record might serve as the mediator in the event of a dispute. But I think, to answer your question, Paul, payment provisions and following them tend to be a very big cause of disputes.
Yeah, as an owner's rep and a general contractor that deals with subcontractors and then GCs all the time, and this isn't just a knock on everybody in the industry, but 90% of the change orders and invoices I get are wrong, and without fail. And so, we're going to spend a lot of time trying to unwind that and talk to the board and get them straightened out, but I have to agree with you. Chris, how are you able to move projects forward without overburdening your property managers?
Thank you, Paul. We're probably going to hear this a lot tonight. But as we said previously, property managers are not project managers. Their expertise is in running the operations of the building, communicating to the residents. As the project manager coordinates the project, the property manager's job is to communicate that to the residents and allocate resources, ensure that the common areas are free of debris, and let the project manager, in this case, manage the project by providing information on the timelines of the project, providing information on the logistics of the project, communicating with the board, communicating with the contractors, communicating with the engineer. That alone is a full-time job. So in order to be successful in any project, and not overburden the property manager, the recommendation always is to hire the right owner's rep / project manager.
Yeah, and I think, you know, it's not just the owner's rep, it's the whole team, right? The engineer, general contractor, the owner's rep, and then, you know, start putting a team together of experts that can help you through this. I mean, at the end of the day, property managers are not project managers. They're not expected to know about all these construction things going on, so great answer. Jason, under SB4D, how do you decide which building components must be included in the structural integrity reserve studies?
Well, so the legislation spells it out pretty clearly, say pretty clearly. Okay. There are basically 8 things we check for a CERS. Okay. I'll try to get these right, but we got roof, structure, windows and exterior doors, waterproofing, exterior painting, plumbing, electrical, and then anything that is, as of HB 913, they just increased the threshold. It used to be $10,000, now it's $25,000, with a couple stipulations. I won't bore you with that. But
does it include lawn furniture?
Yeah, what's that?
Does it include lawn furniture?
Yeah, lawn furniture is definitely in there. You got to be thrown in. So that's how you determine. You know, that's like our checklist, we'll say. When we're doing a CERS in the field, we're looking for things like balconies. That would be structural. You could argue that's waterproofing as well, because you have to put the coatings before you go and put that fancy tile. And I'm sure you like to talk about tile on balconies. We always have, you know, if you can avoid it, do it. But we understand that you know, homeowners like the tile and the balconies. But stay away from carpet. Stay away from anything that can absorb water. And that goes back to your point. Keep the water out.
Guy, do you like tile?
I'm sorry?
Do you like tile on balconies?
Let's talk about waterproofing.
Okay.
Did I really
give us a 1-minute presentation on waterproofing.
Well, you know, one of the things that we have to recognize in our industry is that when condominiums were being built and the general contractors were out there doing it, karma is coming back upon all of us. Back then, the general contractor was always under the impression that it wasn't if you were going to be sued by the condo, it's when you're going to be sued by the condo. I go back 45 years in this marketplace, and I would tell you the majority of general contractors in their insurance policy tells them stay away from condominiums. And it was a certain group of people that did the construction. And what happened is that you guys turned around and sued everybody. Now, guess what? You need their help. You need Misha's company to come in and talk to you. But you kept suing these guys. So you have to start understanding the dynamic and start recognizing how it goes back 40, 50 years when these were first being built. And understand that you're not the good guys. You're considered the bad guys. So you need to recognize and understand to pick out the right engineers that have been trained. You know, you can look at a coating on a wall, and if sheen is not there, you know what that indicates? That indicates that there is significant, copious amounts of water behind that coating. Do the milestone reports look at that? It's all visual. You've got to be able to decipher those information that you have to see it. If you're not trained about it, it's a problem.
Thank you. Jake, with the recent changes in the law, what are the most important business terms that boards should understand before signing construction agreements?
It's a tough question, Paul. But I think for most of my clients...
That's why I picked it out.
For most of my clients, I'm looking at one in particular in the back of the room. When the city decides that you're late, right? When they've decided that your 10-year, 30-year, 40-year, your milestone, the work you have to do pursuant to your engineer's report is past due, what typically happens is you might get a notice. It says you're not in compliance. For every day you're not in compliance, you are going to be fined. In the more drastic scenarios, A city can say you can no longer use that balcony. You can no longer use that pool deck. You can no longer use that garage until you've completed your repair project. And I give that preface because I think timing is very often the most important thing for compliance with these new rules, right? When you hire a contractor to cure your code violation, you don't want it done 5 years from now, you want it done yesterday, right? So having a frank discussion with your contractor, hopefully an owner's rep and an engineer at the beginning of the project to agree upon a reasonable project schedule with a clear end date, right? And with provisions governing any delays that make it clear that if the project is delayed, the contractor needs a change order, right? Otherwise, they might be subject to liquidated damages or something similar under the contract. If you have those scheduling and delay and timing provisions locked down, I think as a board, it puts you in a good position to represent to your owners, I'm doing everything I can to get this violation lifted as soon as I possibly can.
Yeah, people get cranky when they can't use their pools. Or people get cranky when they can't use their pools or go out on their balconies.
That is very true.
Chris, what's the best way for managers to manage, communicate expectations when a project's about to start? Because I know there's a lot of anxiety, a lot of questions. Like, what do you guys do?
It takes a lot of prior planning, months and months of planning, and getting the owners early on involved in that planning, part of that planning. And communicating, being a lot of proactive communication. And being able to convey the scope of that project. And you do that successfully by getting the professionals involved. You get your engineer involved, where he could really articulate the scope of the work and what the potential hurdles can be. You have the project manager.
It's not safe. You know, and people have these conditions on their site, and I think that they have a right to not only understand what the issues are, but also be protected, you know, and so I couldn't agree with you more. Let's see, Chris, what is your process for assembling the right team? Let's say you got a $30 million restoration project, you need an owner's rep, you need an engineer, you need general contractors. What's your first step assembling the team?
Well, Paul, you know, we have the advantage because of our size. We're currently overseeing several, over hundreds of millions of dollars of projects right now.
Yeah.
Throughout South Florida, and we work with many of the most prominent construction companies, engineers, project managers, and of course, great construction law firms that we have here today, and I know Harbour and many other law firms are present here today. So the first step is having the right law firm to review your contracts. That's a lot of contracts you're going to go through that attorney. Identifying first the owner's rep, as I said at the beginning of the presentation, that's basically the conductor of the owner's rep. And let that person, together with the board, interview the other disciplines. And of course, there needs to be a very clear understanding, not only of the scope of work, but the complexity of the project. And depending on those two things, you're going to know the type of project manager you're going to need. You're going to know the type of construction company you're going to need. And you're going to know the type of engineering firm that you're going to need. So we go through all those facets, and then of course, we go through a bidding process at the end. But ultimately, the board makes a decision.
Yeah, thank you. So I had an anecdotal story, and I discussed this with Chris earlier. The use of the owner's rep in, especially South Florida, it's skyrocketed, exploded, and for good reason. You know, we have these jobs that are 30, 40, $50 million projects, and you know, we've already discussed that the managers aren't project managers, the board members aren't project managers. So somebody needs to advocate for the board, approve payouts and construction schedules, and assemble the right team, and really just be the eyes and ears of the board and report back to them what's going on. And there's ways, you know, there's value engineering, there's all kinds of ways that an owner's rep can look out for you. And so when I came back down to South Florida, I had been a general contractor for years and years and years, and they basically, what I had been doing for years and years and years, now they had a new title for us called owner's rep. So it was a very easy transition. We had been doing, Sherry and I had been doing construction schedules and approving pay apps and vetting vendors for years, so good stuff. Jason, how do you determine specifically what type of repair work needs to be performed imminently on a building after completing a phase 1 milestone?
So when we talk about milestones, it's probably good to just set a little background here. There's a phase 1 and a phase 2. Phase 1 is a non-invasive visual inspection of the building we talked about, right? That's what's in the statute. When we go out there, we try to be as detailed as possible on phase 1 without being destructive, because then there's damage and all that.
Yeah.
Now, we'll sound out concrete, we'll do that kind of thing, crack gauges, whatever we can do, lots of photos. An eye that is trained to look for certain things, modes of failure that would lead to something bigger possibly later. Now, the legislation is clear that you're looking for substantial structural deterioration. That's what we're trying to find. And that's defined in another code. We don't need to get into that. But if that is not found, then it's basically a pass-fail. You pass the milestone, that's the minimum requirement. We like to go a little further and say, okay, there's very rarely a building that has no maintenance that needs to be done to your deferred maintenance point. So they may pass the milestone, i.e. there was no substantial structural deterioration, visibly evident, but there's maybe a spall over here that's just a surface imperfection, or peeling paint over here, signs of lack of maintenance. So we like to point those out as kind of like a side benefit and give you a list of maintenance items that you can take care of. And that has to be done every 10 years. Now the phase 2, if you do find, as the phase 1 inspector, substantial structural deterioration, then you have to dig deeper. And that's when you have to become, you have to bring in potentially like a geotech engineer. If there's foundation issues, you might need to do soil sampling.
Structural.
Exactly, structural, pull stucco off the walls, see what's going on behind that. Maybe there's spalled concrete, post-tension cables, rebar, all the stuff that's actually the bones of the structure that need to be repaired at that point.
Yeah, so just to clarify, phase 1 milestone is just a visual inspection of the structural components. Once over the building, you pass or fail. If they find something wrong, that's deterioration or structural damage, they're going to require a phase 2 milestone. And the phase 2 milestone is a pretty big deal, right? We go out there, we rig the building with swing stages, we get the boom lifts, we can set up scaffold, we start opening openings, we look at rebar, spalled concrete. So, good explanation. Thank you, Jason. Jay, what is the role of the local building department in planning and executing a construction project?
So,
be nice to the building officials. They always get a bad rap.
No, so for any project where you're dealing with the structure or electrical systems or anything that we could consider life safety, the city has to give you a permit. Right? You do not want to be doing unpermitted work. And to get a permit, you have to submit a permit application, and typically your engineer that you've hired by this point will submit plans and specifications for the work, so the city can see, okay, what's the plan, scope of work here? Is the plan compliant with the building code? And is this project going to work? Right? You will not get your permit without a proper permit application process and the necessary drawings and specifications. And typically, your design professional will help you in that process to get the permit along with your contractor. After the permit's issued, depending on the type of project, the city may need to perform inspections of their own, right? They might announce them, they might not announce them. There are certain projects, like concrete restoration projects, where the city might rely on a special inspector and require that a separate entity or individual who's a licensed special inspector submit reports that say something along the lines of, I have inspected the work. It appears to be in general compliance with the plans and specifications. Sign and seal it. Here you go, building department. Sometimes they might just rely on those reports. Sometimes they might do inspections of their own. But ultimately, it's a combination of these things. I've seen it all kinds of ways. It would shock you, some of the large 558 cases we have. We find out that the city was just never really there during original construction. Because they typically rely on these private providers, often hired by a developer. And when you ask the city how often were you actually there as this massive 50-story structure was being put up, the answer would surprise you.
I think we should have said it was 7 minutes the inspectors are on site. 7 minutes. Very quickly, Sherry and I had a project in Central Florida. It was a huge 558 claim. Ultimately, they got a settlement. We were awarded the work. Before we started the work, the board wanted to not have to pay permit fees because they already paid permit fees in the original construction, right? Not too far of a reach. So, city said no. We asked the county commissioner to come out there. All the senior building officials came out there, and we basically said, here's 22 pages of code violations at the time it was built. Can we just waive the permit fees this time? Because their expectation was these inspections took place and everything was done right. Guess where we got? We got nowhere. So they have sovereignty. There's not a whole lot we can do there, but it's a tough road. Chris, what risk do you see with boards choosing the least expensive bid? This is the age-old question, right? Cheap, quality, how do you determine who to hire?
Well, normally, we look at it two ways, but let's start with the obvious, which is, normally when you hire a contractor and it's the lowest bid, you may face a lot of challenges. One being, they have low workforce, small workforce, which forces in the subcontract work, which equates to delays and equates to change orders. They may not be bondable. In addition to that, they may not fully understand the scope of work, and that's why they're low bidding the project, which also ends up in change orders and surprises.
Yeah.
So what's made us successful as First Service is that because, as I said earlier, we do oversee hundreds of millions of projects right now, and we've been doing this for over 30 years, we've been able to establish real good relationships with the best contractors on the field, the best project managers, the best attorneys, and instead of concentrating on the risk, we also concentrate on the value that we can bring to our clients. And we're able to do that because of our size and the relationships that we've established throughout the years.
Yeah, thank you.
Professionals.
Guy, if you were, say, the owner's rep or you were advocating for the board and you were to vet the bids, the proposals, and you saw one that was way out of line, usually what I see is they're all within a 5% range, and then you'll have a couple outliers. One will be real high, clearly they don't want the job. One will be 15% low. What's the first thought that comes to mind?
Well, this is the age-old problem at this point, at least from the board's perspective. They see those numbers and they want to go low. It's always difficult to do it right the second time or the third time. That's the last thing that you really want. Again, from a construction perspective, we throw up low, we kind of set the high aside and then start talking to the people in the middle. More importantly, then we start looking at their experience. We talk to the superintendents to find what their experience is. I mean, there's a whole litany of things that can be done at that point, from the standpoint of recognizing their level of expertise. You know, it's just like engineers. When we started all this craziness, engineers were trying to figure out what this was all about. Recognizing that, well, do we really look at this? Do we look at that? Visual. Well, yeah, and then we're checking off boxes. Unfortunately, what we've seen quite a bit is that condominiums have been getting an engineering firm to look at it. We've seen situations in which there was a $21 million assessment done. We came back and saw another consultant come in, another engineering firm come in, and bring it down to about $80,000. There's a real discrepancy at that point. And I will tell you that it's depending upon the expertise of the engineering firm that understands what works. They just can't check the box and think everything, throw the baby out with the bathwater.
Yeah, I agree. Thank you. Jason, how do you determine specifically what type of repair work needs to be performed after a phase 2 inspection? I know you're not heavily involved in the phase 2 and the construction part, but say there is a phase 2, destructive testing basically, they open everything up, they find issues, what's the next steps?
Well, I'd say what you first want to do as a board, if it's in a unit owner controlled condo, is you start looking at the owner's rep, come in and write a bid spec for everything that's there. So, for example, apples to apples, we all know what that means, right? So you might have 5 bidders on a project, let's say. But if they're just saying what we think needs to be done, bidder 1 might say 20 grand, bidder 2 might say, like you just mentioned, 100,000, but that's not apples to apples. They're bidding on different scopes of work. The scope of work is the key ingredient. So if you have one entity, the owner's rep, let's say write a bid spec, and every bidder has to quote what that work would cost for their company to do that specific work. Right there is a good starting point. When you get into the details of what needs to be done, it could be anything. It could be roof flashing, it could be a cooling tower on the roof needs to be helicoptered out. Generators, it could be the pool furniture, you know.
Yeah.
You don't need a owner for that, but that's a reserve item in its own right.
Yeah, for me, if it's a phase 2 milestone inspection and there's substantial structural issues, I'm not going to write a bid spec. I'm going to call Misha. Misha, can I call you? You write the bid specs? Okay. I'm going to call an engineer. You know, he's the guy I need to create the repair drawings. He's the guy, the starting point. If I'm the owner's rep, he's the starting point. I got to have the specifications. I got to have the repair drawings. And you would be surprised how many times people, they get this report and they just get on the phone, they start calling people and they're like, hey, I got this milestone phase 2 inspection report. I need a bid. And and actually the other component is how many contractors actually go out there and give them a bid. It's like you're missing an entire step. And I think more to your point, the apples to apples bid, you're never going to get apples to apples bid if you're taking a general summary of the phase 2 milestone inspection and sending it out to bid. That's not bid ready. Okay, you need somebody like Misha, you need an MQE, they need to come in, they need to write the specifications, they need to do the repair drawings, and then I'm at a point where I can say, okay, I can start creating an RFP manual around this and start soliciting bids. Okay. Jason, what steps can an association take or not take to maximize ROI and the useful life of their common area building components?
All right, that's a good question. We get this a lot. And the number one thing, and you guys probably have heard that you have to do the milestone every 10 years, or the recertification 30, 40, 50, and every 10. The same with the CERS. It has to be updated at least every 10 years. I would venture to say, and having done a lot of these, if you wait 5 years, that's probably going to, your funding model is going to be completely out of whack. Hurricanes, inflation, interest changing, compared to what you had in your initial reserve study, or your initial CERS. What we recommend is to get on a plan annually for a, what CAI calls a level 3 update. Essentially a financial review of the initial reserve study. So if you do the initial reserve study in 2025, the the SERS, we'll say. 2026, you call up the person or the company that did your SERS, and they will run the numbers for everything that you did or didn't do. So if you were supposed to do your roof but you didn't, you adjust that with your provider for your service. If you did, let's say, a cooling tower, I use that as an accelerated replacement, it wasn't due for 2028, let's say, but you did it in 2026, you bring that into the model, you accelerate that project, and once you have all your new expenditures, the actual expenditures, compared to the theoretical ones that were in the original SERS, then you can run a new funding model. You look at CPIs, you look at interest rates at that time, and that's how you keep track of the time value of money, because that changes with time, obviously. And then you can do that on an annual basis. And then every 3, 4, 5 years, you do a full reserve study update with a site visit, and that would get the reserve providers boots back on the ground to take a look at the actual condition at the time of.
So Jake, I just did a webinar on rising construction costs, because I'm looking at construction numbers all day. I'm doing cost of repairs, efficiency of settlement analysis, budgeting. We got all these issues facing us today, right? And part of this is construction costs. Everything's going up. What cost $1 last year could be $3 this year. You know, and the people that waited to do their milestone, their structural integrity research studies, or to get their project started, are now going to pay a premium for a whole bunch of reasons. Lack of labor, there's very few people, and I think Chris brought this up, bonding capacity. You know, a lot of people hit their ceiling. You know, a bunch of work out there, they grab their work, they can't bond for anymore. So now, and this is just my perspective, it's my opinion, take it for what it's worth. I do see prices rising because big companies that have no bonding limit now know that they can raise their price because the little guys are up. Does that make sense? So that's one contributor. We got tariffs, we got supply chain issues. Jake, what are you seeing?
No, I mean, Jason touched on this earlier. I think he said the secret ingredient is the scope of work and figuring it out early, right? If you know your scope of work, if you know the quantities, obviously there are certain projects like a concrete restoration project where you're never going to know the total quantity off the bat. But for a project where you know what the scope is, the engineer has identified exactly what work at your pool deck has to be done. There is no reason why they cannot price out every single material, every item of labor, every associated cost at the outset, and attach that pricing to your contract as an exhibit, right? In that case, your pricing is locked in. I have a client right now where a contractor insisted on getting paid more than what they were owed under the contract. And I don't think they're going to win. Because the contract says what it says.
Yeah.
I can't comment exactly on what project it is. But if your contract has the pricing, the contractor is going to need a change order to change the pricing, right? Because that's not what the owner agreed to. There are situations of a project where a reasonable change order might be necessary, right?
Kind of unavoidable in construction.
Maybe you discover some unforeseen condition when you do some destructive investigation. You discover a new problem you didn't know about until you opened it up. But if you're doing that original scope of work that was contemplated from the beginning, your contract should try to lock in the pricing if you can. And of course, there are escalation provisions and things you can work into your contract. Let the lawyers deal with that. But I would say from your perspective as an owner, what is the scope of work? How much is it going to cost? And get them to put that in writing.
Yeah, and I think, you know, a lot of times we have our subcontractors or the GCs that work on our projects, we have them talk to your supplier. You know, lock in the pricing. And it's amazing how many people don't do that. I mean, that's probably one of my first ones. I'm going to know, let's just say it's a simple paint job. I'm calling paint rep, and I'm going to say this job's going to last a year and a half. Are you going to give me the same pricing throughout the job? Yeah, of course we're going to give you the same pricing. I mean, that's a very simplified version, but contractors and subcontractors and these people, they can do that. They can call their suppliers and lock in pricing. And then, as you alluded to, typically you have the scope of work, you have the quantities, and then you have unit pricing, right? And that really kind of just boxes them in that they can't change more. Just because, I think a lot of people think just because there's change order means they can charge more, right? I mean, there may be some general conditions associated, but your unit price is locked in. So I think having a good attorney, making sure those unit prices are, clearly defined, and just planning with your suppliers and make sure that these prices are locked in. Guy, what are you seeing?
I think we're seeing the same thing, and don't disagree with anyone that's commented on the panel here. Coming from the manufacturing side of the equation, those numbers are always going to go up. And the more information that you disseminate to them so that they can plan ahead as well. But again, it comes down to being transparent with the people that you're working with.
Yeah.
If you're being able to communicate that you're looking at long-term exposure at this point in time, that's key to the success of any project.
Communications, it is key, and being transparent. I think, that's one of the main pushes of the legislation, especially HB 913, is transparency. You can't be giving contracts if you're a board member to your cousin or your uncle. If you're an engineer or you're a general contractor and you're involved in a milestone, you have to declare that you may be bidding to work. So I think the legislators have done a really good job, and hopefully we can help these people through this. Jason, what steps can associations take or not take? Sorry, did that one. Jake, how do we vet the contractors? Like, what's the process? You got the ones you bring them in, there's somebody new. Like, in terms of, I know because we've worked together on 558 cases, and I know you guys at Harbour have a vetting process. What's that look like?
So, the first question I will ask is usually to the engineer director of the project and say, have you worked with these guys before? Right? Have you successfully completed a project like this with them before? I would also advise my client to ask the contractor, have you done projects like this on buildings like mine with expectations like ours before? I think you'd be shocked to learn since Champlain how many construction companies that used to just do painting that all of a sudden now do concrete.
Yeah.
Right? Things like that. All of a sudden they have a concrete division, right? Or they have a waterproofing division. Whatever it might be, because there's a need for it. But what you don't want is for your building to be their test case, right? Just like you'd ask a nanny for references for your kids. Ask for references. Contractor, can you please give me 3 other buildings that you've done similar projects on? Give me the names of their board members so I can give them a call and have a chat. If you find out that this is a contractor that ends up in litigation with every one of their association clients, you may or may not want to hire them, right? These are some of the questions I would steer my boards to.
Well, gentlemen, thank you for your input. We got to wrap things up. Everyone, thank you for hanging in there. I hope you enjoyed the presentation. Thank you. I think we're going to grab a picture real quick.
Send me a message. You can also send me a message, WhatsApp.
To this thing?
Yeah, to that number that's right there.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, we also got to take it out.